Well, hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. So today we're going to take a quick look at this Sanyo M2818L all the way from the mid-80s. Now it's a very simple unit, a combined radio cassette, but more in an upright position, and it's only a mono one, this one. It's got a two-way speaker, but it's not a stereo per se. It does have short, medium and long wave radio plus FM mono, and a very simple tape radio selection switch, and it looks like quite a simple mechanism on this one. So this particular example doesn't work, at least the cassette mechanism doesn't work. It doesn't play fast forward or rewind, and when I move it around it's making a bit of a rattly noise. I think there's a bit of broken belt or something in there, and I'm sure that's probably all it is. I would imagine it's quite a simple mechanism inside and a relatively hollow box, I should think. Now there aren't any external damage or anything like that particularly, so I don't think there's broken mountings or anything inside there, which is why I think it's probably just the belt that's gone. But just before we crack it open and have a look, it does also come, as well as with its original packaging, it does have the original instruction book as well, which tells us all that we need to know about the different functions and features and how to maintain it and clean the head and all that kind of stuff. So that's quite nice to have. Also, it comes with its original little Sanyo warranty, which of course will long since be expired, especially given that this one comes with the original purchase receipt, which tells us it's all the way from July 1984. So there we go then. So that's all that we've got to say at the moment about the unit. So I think what we'll do is crack it open, have a look inside, service the tape deck and maybe clean the switches and stuff like that, and see how we get on. Right, let's go. Let's get the back case open. Okay, here we go with this Sanyo M2818L. Right, so first thing to see is the numerous connections holding this together. So it looks like, well, the handle wants to fall out on its own anyways. Then we've got the aerial just there, and then the power connectors. Now this is an interesting one because all of the cables are actually soldered onto the board, so it looks like you'd have to literally take everything away, desolder them, or unscrew the transformer and the AC inlet and everything else just to get into here. So I think what we'll do instead, yeah, that's really a really strange design. That always strikes me as odd, how one side or the other does not come apart, because of course really doesn't make servicing, well, I guess it is what it is. I can actually work on the cassette deck, to be fair. It's just that it's nice to separate parts out if we can. It gives us more access to move things around and stuff. But anyways, so here we go. So you can see the board just here, so tuner cap and the various FM and AM IF stages and what have you there. We've got the radio band switch there, four-way. So this is the FM, shortwave, medium wave and long wave just there. And then you've got your master switch there. So that's tape and radio. Then your erase head there, your erase switch, and that linkage is done via this lever. So when the record is pressed, obviously it won't work now without a tape in there, but that'll actuate this lever and thus this lever and the pin, and then work on that switch there. Very small speaker. We've got a 3 ohm, 1.5 watt, and that's probably what, a 3.5 inch, something like that. Yeah, now straight away I can see that there's no point in testing this, and I'll explain why in just a second. So I usually plug these and test them first, trying to get this so that I can actually, you can see what I mean now about it being a nuisance. There isn't enough cable in there to lay it in any direction whatsoever, so it is a bit of a nightmare. But anyways, we are where we are. So doesn't give you very good access though. I might move the camera the other side, I think, in a moment, so that we can actually see what's going on with the tape mech. So this is where it gets a bit tongue-tied, is that all of the cables are actually attached properly, as it were, to both ends. There's no spade terminals to detach that back case. And here we have the tape mechanism though, which is actually, well, I guess it's there. It'll be easy enough to get out. We can see a mounting point or two, so it's not going to be too hard to remove this from the casing to work on it, I guess. All we've got there is the leaf switch, so we can see the contact just there. But anything obvious missing? Yep. Where is the belt? So the pulleys obviously are present, and the flywheel is rather silently gliding there, and that's rather nice. I'm trying to see if there's any actual residue, actually, whether someone's removed the belt and never got around to replacing it. I don't know. Normally there'll be lots of, well, no, there is some residue. Let me just move the camera. So there is some residue in that pulley by the looks of it. I can't see. Normally if it's thrown a belt, it'll be stuck all over the casing, all over the circuitry. It's hard to tell. I can't really see any. But anyway, that's that. But the pots are easy enough to get to, and you can see what I mean about the switches as well. They're going to be super easy to clean. Obviously, I've not even plugged it in yet, so I don't know how dirty or scratchy they are, but nonetheless. So changing the belt, by the looks of things, is going to be an absolute piece of cake on this. Literally just going to be a case of unscrewing the keeper there and dropping a small belt off of that pulley just there and onto that one. And the only reason I'm hesitating is I'm just looking to see if there's anything else. It must be mechanical linkages. Yeah, there's cogs and gears down inside, so we haven't got any idler rubbers or anything to worry about by the looks of things. It's literally just a main drive belt off the flywheel there. So okay, having said that, of course, so we've got the motor. I'm just trying to figure this out. So there's your motor spindle just there with that pulley. It'll probably go around through there, back around that side and in, I would imagine. So we'll figure that out anyway. And yeah, look how clean it is inside. I'm waffling on a bit, but look how clean it is inside. It's actually not too bad. And there's not much to it really, is there? Let's be honest. Basically, circuit board on that wall just there, a simple speaker, and a fairly simple hybrid metal and plastic cassette mech. There we go then. Well, this really is very weird. I'm just taking a general poke around at this and having a look. And I was explaining just now about the erase mechanism. And if we trace it right back to the circuit board, we'll see that pin actually moves. And that's sliding back and forth, which in turn is of course actuated by this lever, which is fine, which is in turn a result of this pin, this sort of bar there. But here's where we get stuck. The record button is not working. It's not pressing down at all. There's the play, stop, fast forward, rewind, pause. The pause switch is just there, on and off, on and off. Everything's working fine. There's enough movement and play. The whole mechanism is loose. But the record feels like there's literally, I'm just trying to press it as hard, well, not as hard as I can. I'll probably end up breaking it, but there's just no movement whatsoever, to the point where I was almost questioning whether or not this even is supposed to record, or whether this model's locked down, unless somebody's had this out and mounted it really hard, perhaps by that screw there, and actually put too much pressure on. I might try that actually. I might just while I'm here, I don't know if I can actually without damaging the antenna. I'm going to have to be super careful. Yeah, I don't want to damage those wires. I might be able to just take some pressure off. Let's just take some pressure off of that plate and see what happens. Yeah, oh, yeah, nothing at all, nothing at all. So, that's really bizarre. So what I might do is get this cassette mech out. Incidentally, there is a cassette in there and it is actually complete. It doesn't have the right protect tabs removed, so there's no reason why it should not work. But that's very odd. And no sooner had I turned the camera off, I thought, that can't be right, that can't be right. So I pressed it with more vigour than perhaps I might normally have done. And lo and behold, there you go. Play and record, working together. Stop, record. There we go. Now everything's working. So at least mechanically it's working. There we go. That's better. And now we can see how everything's working now. So that, there you go. There's your actuating arm. There's your pin. That then pulls on the switch. Just there. Perfect. Good. So at least we know that's going to work now. We will put some cleaner in there as well, just in case, because it's probably been, well, I bet you it hasn't been recorded on for a while, given that A, the record button was seized, and B, there are no belts to speak of, so the tape cassette itself hasn't been used in however many years. So you bet your bottom dollar that that little switch there has probably got some sort of corrosion on it. So we'll give it a bit of a clean, and yeah, there we go. At least we've sorted the record out. So I'm just going to give these pulleys a bit of a clean now. They've not been cleaned, obviously, since the belt was removed. So I'm just using a bit of alcohol. You can see there's a bit of stuff coming out of there, but by and large they're pretty good, to be fair. And I'll just carry on. I'll do the same with this one here and also the flywheel, get those cleaned up, and then we'll go ahead and try and find a belt. This belt's actually coming away almost in chunks, so that might be perhaps what we heard rattling around in here. There's nothing obviously broken or anything, so I'm guessing instead of this one turning to like a tar, like some belts often do over the years, this has been more like a, it's sort of just fractured and broken up into sort of fairly dry pieces. So that at least has made the cleanup operation much less unpleasant than it could have been. Also at this juncture you can opt to actually remove the flywheel as well and oil and lubricate the spindle and everything. I probably won't do that on this one today. It's spinning absolutely fine. It doesn't need any further lubrication. I will probably have to get the keeper off though, just to get the belt on anyway, so let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, just before we get the belt on then, and indeed to help us measure it up, we'll get the bearing plate off. Just checking for any extra washers or anything like that might be underneath. Just a simple little nylon pad. That's all there is to see there. Good. Right, let's go and try and find a belt then. Right, so we might have found a belt that's the right size, hopefully. Like so. It's always hard to tell, but the path for this tends to be quite often dictated by everything else around it, because originally I wondered if it was one that just went between point A and point B and this pulley moved across as and when. Transpired that this particular piece was in the way, so it couldn't do that. It has to go around the external periphery of all three, and we've now got it so that if we turn one, in fact everything else does turn. So what I might just do is plug this in now and just see if the control mechanisms work as they're supposed to. Okay, I've literally just plugged this in. The first thing I was greeted with was the little hiss of radio. So we know that works and that's fine. But of course what I did have to do was lift this up to get to the front panel to select the tape so we could try the cassette mechanism. And whilst I was there, I thought, well, I might as well just try the other switches and controls anyway. And turns out they're all absolutely perfect. There's no dirt in there. The potentiometers are clean. There's no crackle or anything like that. So whilst at this juncture I'd normally go in and clean all the pots and the switches, on this one there is absolutely no point. There's no point running solvents and stuff, contact cleaners and lubricants through the switches if they don't need it, and a little bit of gentle use will restore them to 100% perfect working order if they aren't already. So I'm going to let sleeping dogs lie on that. But what we have though got now is the tape. So I'm just going to lean over because I don't actually know which one is play on this. I'm not familiar with this mechanism. So play is this one. Now there is a cassette in there because I left one in earlier when I was trying to get the record mechanism to unjam. So here's play, and hopefully everything will work. And there we go.
In October, the tawny owls often hold terraces.
So we've got a lovely old tape here all about birds, bird song and everything else. It came with an old boombox, weirdly. So if you can hear birds twittering and a chap narrating about tawny owls, there we go, that'll be him. So stop that now. And now is fast forward or rewind, one of the two. Let me just check. Okay, fast forward. Yep, that's working. Stop, rewind, and play. Perfect. That's good stuff. Do you know what? I think that's probably going to be the quickest, cheapest and easiest little overhaul we'll have ever done. It's clean inside. It's in lovely condition. Nothing's been tampered with. We've just cleaned the pulleys for the belt bearing surfaces. And yeah, literally just put a new belt on. So we'll put the keeper plate back on in a second. And that will be that. So we'll button it back up and see how it sounds. Just one final quick check whilst the keeper plate is now on top of the bearing. Yep, fine. Perfect. Good stuff. And just for the curious, that noise that we heard rattling around earlier on inside was indeed some of the broken belt. And I don't know if this will work now, but yeah, can you hear how crispy it is? It's snapping. They normally just turn to goo, but this is actually sort of snapping into bits. So there you go, much cleaner to, much easier to clean up at the time anyway. And there you go, that's what that little bit of noise was. So no panic, obviously nothing's been broken, and fantastic news, right. So all that remains is to get the handle back in and gently roll this back into position. Just spotted the other bit of the belt. There we go. Nothing else to line up really. Normally you've got to make sure that the cassette mech is all lined back up with the erase switch and all that sort of stuff, but today we didn't have to take any of that out. Now the book that came with it did tell us all about how to maintain this, of course, so it'd be remiss of us not to clean the heads there. Number 2 being the play head, 3 being the erase head, 4 being the pinch roller, 5 being the capstan, and 1 being a nice little Q-tip, probably with some alcohol on it. So let's go ahead and just do that now. I won't necessarily show you it on camera, but effectively, where's the play? If we put this into play position or somewhere near, we can actually get into clean all those parts with a bit of a Q-tip, and that will be that. So we'll get on and do that now. So that is literally all that came off of the pinch roller, the capstan and the heads. So not too bad overall. But now what I want to do is just quickly put some batteries in, just to check the batteries work okay, or more importantly to check the battery function on this unit works okay. So that's in, and I'll put a tape in now. Eject, and whoops, let's put this cassette in. Right, here we go then. So this is the first time we've actually tried playing anything seriously on this. So let's have a go, see what happens. There we go. Well, it's working okay. Sounds a bit boxy, as you would imagine. I'm just going to actually put this onto radio as well, see what we can do with that. So FM radio.
99 thump.
There we go.
A centipede with a wooden leg.
Wow.
The word win to 60.
When. Oh, this is hard.
Wow, there's loads of channels. It's very sensitive. It's fantastic. Considering the aerial's not even up either. That's not a really, that really is quite a nice radio. I wonder if it'll work on anything else. Yep. Medium wave.
Should be neon letters on
Gosh.
the front of those cars.
Long wave.
Can't own gospel music or be a gospel music player completely.
Gosh.
Because
Wow. Short wave. Wow. Gosh, wow, that's fantastic. So it works on all four, like AM, FM. We've got short, medium and long wave plus FM. No FM stereo, of course. It is only a mono unit. I've got to say that is one of the nicest radios actually I've come across in quite a while with regard to its sensitivity and its selectivity. That's fabulous. So the tape's a bit boxy with that speaker there, but it is supposed to be actually a two-way speaker, I think. There's a woofer there, and it does look like a tweeter. There's something shining in that tiny little 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch speaker just there. So that's interesting. So I had put it all back together again and tested it, and I noticed that it was running a little bit slow. So I checked the belt tension. I thought it was okay. So I checked with a smaller belt and a larger belt, and none of the tension differences, either greater or lesser, made any differences. So I did stick with my original one, which did feel right. I also put a little drop of oil on the motor spindle in case that was putting up a bit of resistance. I've checked the resistance of the reels and they're okay. I looked at the board to see if there are any trim pots for the motor speed, and there aren't. So long and the short of it is, we've now got to, I've just checked and I think I can see a tiny hole on the front of the motor. So it looks like the trim pot adjustment is actually done on the motor. So to that end, we've actually got to unscrew the mechanism anyway, withdraw that and try and trim it up as we're playing it. Hopefully that'll work. So everything is in everything else's way in this one, as I explained earlier. So we've got cables that are soldered from the back case to the front. We've now tried to remove the cassette mech, but that in itself, yeah, that needs propping as well. So I'm going to get just going to get some foam to prop this up. Everything is linked. It's impossible to work on as it is. I've got to say, this is probably the trickiest thing I've worked on in quite some while. Everything is just landlocked and tied to everything else. Like I can't, honestly, the frustration here, because everything is pulling on everything else, and all I'm trying to do is get the tape speed adjusted. So let's see if we can actually do this now. Press play. Right. There we go. So what we've just done there is just trimmed the actual motor voltage to get us a bit more speed, and we'll just hear how this kicks back in now.
Looked in the mirror today before you'd gone away. There's a man there now.
There we go. I'm happy with that.
Grey hair and a furrowed brow.
Oops. You can actually do it with test tapes and stuff like that, but I'm very familiar with this music, so I know that that's okay. So let's just get this all back together again without breaking anything. Honestly, this so, everything's so fragile. Right, okay, here we go. That'll go back inside there with the eject door open. The erase is the correct side of there. We can lock that back in. And now all that remains is to put the earth screws back into this one. Number 2. Number 3. And now we can finally put it back together again. So the aerial goes over onto the connector just at the back here, which you probably can't see. To be fair, neither can I, and it's completely the wrong angle. Honestly, this unit hasn't been thought about from a maintenance point of view, that's for sure. So I'm going to put the handle back onto this side, gently roll everything back over. Yeah, such a sort of a cheap hollow box, but actually it's quite tricky to line everything up right. But anyways, and so here it is then, the Sanyo M2818L, all the way, as we're reliably informed from the original purchase receipt, from July 1984. So quite a nice little unit really, very light, very portable. It runs off 6 volts, so just 4D batteries would get you on your way. Plus there's an AC inlet as well if you were using it from a fixed position. So the radio is really quite nice on this. It's very selective, it's very sensitive. So it's on at the moment, I think, and we'll just turn this up a touch.
Governor of that prison.
And that's on long wave.
The loss of liberty.
And medium wave. There we go. And I know shortwave works as well if needs be. And FM.
Between the inmates, this was Martha's footprint. We find all we can do sometimes.
There are just channels everywhere, I've got to say. So it's a very good radio. So that's pretty good. So let's put it onto tape mode now. And here we go.
The way you tease me, it ain't fair. I want to check you out.
And I've got to say, the tone control is really quite a nice wide sweep on this. So if we turn it up high, so it's quite an effective tone control, which is good. And the mechanism isn't too bad either. So rewind, stop, fast forward, and play. So that's working really quite nicely, I have to say. Now, so what did we do in the end? Well, we didn't really do much with regard to the controls. They seemed to work quite nicely, and there wasn't really any noise or anything, so I didn't have to clean them in the end. That was all good stuff. The problem really was with the tape mech. Now, I didn't actually, for once, even test this before I took it apart, which is what I would normally do. I wouldn't have been surprised, I guess, then, to find that inside the belt had completely deteriorated, and so it wouldn't have worked anyway. So we put a new belt on there, and that was absolutely fine. Also put a drop of oil on the motor spindle, and just generally sort of gave it a bit of a clean, but it wasn't too bad inside. But then when I put it all back together again to play it, it was running slow. Now, because the original belt had deteriorated, I wondered if perhaps the tension wasn't very good on the belt, if it might have been too tight or too loose. Obviously, if it's too loose, it can slip and run slow. If it's too tight, it can overload the motor and drag it and make it play slow. So I tried a slightly larger belt, a slightly smaller belt, and sure enough, I was right first time, and the tension was fine. It's just that the motor wasn't running very well at all. It was just slightly slow, really. So I looked on the board, and there were no trim pots or anything on the circuit board. And it turns out that this one did have a trim pot on the motor itself, which is not uncommon at all. The only thing with this particular model, and it was my main criticism of it, is that everything's very hard to get to. It's in plain sight and very few fixings to hold various parts together. The problem is that the cables are point-to-point soldered, and there's very little leeway to move things around. They really cut costs on cable lengths and stuff like that, especially given the amount of free space inside the unit. It's really quite a hollow light box, very cheaply made, to be honest, and the cables could have been doing with being a couple of inches longer to allow you to get hold of things. For example, for the most part, in fact for all of this video, I had to have the back case connected to the front case because you couldn't separate them without unbolting all of the transformer and everything that goes with that, and the speaker. And then when we found out that the actual mechanism was running slow and the tape was playing slowly, in order to get to the trim pot screw, we had to take the cassette mech out, which is fairly standard, apart from the fact that you couldn't actually rotate it without actually sort of getting yourself tied up in knots, really. So it was just really awkward. Something that was very simple to do in theory was actually quite a pain, just because of the specifics of this model. Now, putting it back together was also a bit tricky because it's a bit flimsy, not terribly well made, so getting the screws to line up was not ideal. Normally you'd expect the screws to slot straight into their holes because they are quite deep set, and normally you drop the screw straight in, screw it in, happy days. But on this one, they couldn't sort of find its direction very well. The screws were, you know, not terribly well guided. So generally, I guess in essence, it was good fun. It was portable, it's light. Now it's working, it'd be absolutely brilliant little unit to carry about, to be honest, for picnics and stuff like that. Very nice, actually. The tape's working beautifully now. It's running well, the speed's correct. The radio is superb and only uses 4 batteries, so that's quite cool. So I've got to say, to give it its due, it would still be fairly usable in today's age, but if you wanted to work on it in terms of longevity, I think the parts are just a little bit cheap. They're cheapened out by the mid 80s, and this certainly wasn't a premium model by any degree. I've noticed the same actually on a lot of other Sanyo stuff of the same period. For example, only just purely coincidentally, I have this at my feet at the moment, which is a Sanyo MX315L. I've been working on a few of these lately, and I've got to say they really feel quite cheap compared to a lot of the other models that were around at the time. Now, I'm a massive Sanyo fan. In fact, it was the Sanyo personal stereos that got me into my love of the retro gear in the first place, if I'm honest. So I've got nothing against Sanyo per se, but I've got to say this was probably the nastiest, horrible, cheapest sort of feeling thing I've ever worked on. So yeah, it sounds great for a little portable unit, but would I trust it to be as robust to carry it about everywhere and know that it was going to last me for a long time? Probably not. But then I guess back in the day, it was never meant to be. It was supposed to be something small, light, portable, and fairly cheap, if you can call £30 in 1984 cheap. But that's progress, I guess. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe and hit the notifications bell for updates. And I'll be back soon with more retro tech, and I'll see you then. Take care. Bye bye.